And tonight it starts off with Thursday night football. The Cincinnati Bengals going to Baltimore right at the right time. Joe Burrow starting to show that he's showing some flashes of doing something. I think he's been doing something. His team around him wasn't, but now it looks like they're trying to get back to where they were. I still think they're a clear second behind Baltimore, but they're going to Baltimore. Now, which Baltimore are we going to get tonight?
Good question. I was about to say, I believe it is a must win for both teams because you're alluding to it. The Ravens, they play really well for 2 weeks and then they play a suspect game. And then they play well again and then they play another suspect game. Which Ravens team shows up today? Will the real Ravens stand up? I don't know. If for them to play below par, that's going to be very disappointing if it happens because the Bengals are a rivalry game
Mhm.
within their divisions. If they don't show up to play their rival, then what's going on in Baltimore?
And that's true. And what really is going on in Baltimore, because you're talking about the inconsistency, but before the inconsistency came with Lamar Jackson alone, and if he was inconsistent, the team kind of followed suit and they didn't win games or they were winning inconsistently as well. But now you have him and Derrick Henry. So when Lamar is inconsistent, he could be inconsistent throwing the ball, but he can go back to running the way he was running. And then you still have Derrick Henry. You look at Derrick Henry, you look at his size, over 240 pounds, 6'3", still has some burst. He's still a power runner, but can be a bit of a finesse runner as well. But then you look at the stats, over 6 yards a carry and 1,000 yards already this season. I wasn't even, I knew that he had a lot of yards, but 1,000 yards already, over 6 yards a carry. This, if the season ended, as they always say, if the season ended, he would have the largest yards per carry of any running back ever. I mean, I think that even includes Barry Sanders when he had his 2053.
Yeah, he's sprung some long runs so far this year. And you mentioned he's over 1,000 yards, and it's not like he's getting 25 carries a game.
No.
He's usually under 15, and that bodes well for him and the team going forward because he's not going through a lot of wear and tear. He's just busting off long runs here and there. And so that's going to mean he'll be fresher later on this season, provided he doesn't get injured.
And you look at the 11 touchdowns on the ground, and don't forget he can catch out of the backfield. I always wondered what was the problem with running backs who didn't catch well out of the backfield. Typically, players, period, especially on offense, they've been playing football forever. Even in high school, they were catching the ball out of the backfield. Typically, in high school, if you're the best athlete, they'll keep giving you the ball any which way they can. But the most basic part of football is catching the ball. And so these players have been catching forever. They did not forget how to catch. And I guess it comes down to finding the soft spots, but running backs don't typically do the finesse routes. You'll get special running backs who can do it, like a McCaffrey or when Marshall Falk was playing. They can
Mhm.
run those finesse routes. You can put them in the slot. They don't just do the flare like a lot of running backs over the screens. They can do the post caught off, the slants and in and out. They can do that. They can do a flag. They can do a drag. They can do all those things like regular wide receivers. But Derrick Henry does catch out of the backfield on occasion, and he breaks pretty damn big runs. Linebackers cover him, but they can't cover him too often.
So I think because they've been able to establish the run most games and they run play action and RPOs, defense is focused. Okay, Henry didn't get it. So now they're thinking it's a pass. And you're not thinking about him coming out of the backfield to catch a pass. You worry
No.
about the receivers. So it's going to take a really good defensive game plan to slow them down when they're on their game.
And going back to Cincinnati, you look at Joe Burrow, see how he started off. The team started off as a whole pretty slowly, but then he picked it up and the team was still losing. Now they're in sync with him, still just a game under 500, 4-5 going into this game on the road. But then you look at his numbers, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Russell Wilson's numbers when he was with Denver. The team was losing, wasn't looking good, but his numbers look pretty good. Not great, but with Joe Burrow at this moment, his numbers look pretty damn great. 20 touchdowns and 4 interceptions on the year. You would think it would be a lot worse based on how the team has played early.
Yeah, I believe their issues are on the other side of the ball. Their
Yeah.
defense doesn't they don't stop a whole lot of people.
Yeah, they might not stop a whole lot of people because in the beginning were they tired. I always use the tired reason for defenses because the offense is three and out. or they may even score too much on offense. But then you think about the enthusiasm for the team as a whole and the defense just as enthusiastic. You think they would be able to play well defensively, but they don't, and they hadn't this time. Do you think Baltimore is a still a bit one dimensional? Because Lamar Jackson, I don't believe he's ever going to scare you consistently enough just being a pocket passer. You get more wear and tear on your mind dealing with him, knowing that he can break one because he's still explosive, not as explosive as the past, but Derrick Henry adds a new element. So it weighs in your mind even more as a defensive coordinator.
Right. And as an offensive coordinator, you have Derrick Henry. Why would you want to be throwing the ball all over the field when you have Derrick Henry? So obviously, if you get Derrick Henry going, that takes a lot of pressure off of Lamar Jackson. It opens up the passing game. It opens up the play action passing game and RPOs. If Lamar chooses
Hmm.
he wants to keep it, I don't see him busting long runs and shaking guys like he used to. But he's still dangerous. He can still pick up an 8 yard, go for a first down or whatever. And that's effective. Sometimes all you got to do is move the sticks.
Yeah, that's it. Milk the clock, use the sticks, and if you have Derrick Henry, you can move the sticks methodically. But then he still breaks that big run on occasion, and it's been fairly occasional in which he's broken big runs. And I mean big runs for him. You're talking 80-yard runs he's broken in the
Yeah.
past. Here in Jacksonville, over a 99-yard run a couple of years ago. So he has that ability to break those big runs, and he's not the typical scat back or even what you would consider a quintessential running back, which they say 6 foot, 225 pounds. He's 6 foot three, over 230, 240, and he still gets those kinds of results. But yeah, there's no secret why Baltimore is as successful as they are offensively, primarily on the ground. Your son follows Baltimore. That's his team. And I know because that's his team, you probably keep an eye on them a little bit more than you probably keep an eye on most teams. Zay Flowers, what do you see him as a wide receiver? Not the quintessential wide receiver. Not exactly Steve Smith either because he's small in stature.
I actually haven't watched them that closely this year. I mean, I pay attention to the scores just because, when they lose or they lose a heartbreaker, he feels bad. I feel bad for him, as his dad.
Mhm.
But Zay Flowers, to me, I think he's dangerous, especially when you think of the play action game. Now, if they're behind and they got to throw every down, he's not going to be that effective. But the way they're running the offense now, setting up the run to pass, Zay Flowers, he has talent. He's got speed,
Oh, yeah, he
and he can
does.
be dangerous.
Yeah, he has speed. He's one of those sneaky people. You look at that name, and it's not a name that you fall in love with because you hadn't heard him in college, and then coming into the pros, expecting him to do well. He's a player who came into the pros and worked his way to being to where he's at. Now he's playing well, and he just has a dynamic offense around him now, led with Lamar Jackson, but led by Lamar Jackson or led by Derrick Henry. But let's not also forget on the other side of the ball, Jamar Chase, Cincinnati Bengals, still that big name receiver. I know there was some whining going on before the season, contract wise. You like that, keep that out of your head. I don't believe that there are receivers or players, period, who have issues in the offseason and then deliberately don't play well during the season because they're still complaining about their contract. I think the ultimate competitor in these players is the reason why the contract is probably on their mind, but once game time comes, they still are there for their teams and they still could make it even better just in case they don't get the contract from their home team. They definitely will be a big commodity on the road.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the individual. Let's look at Clay Thompson. He was playing for a contract last year, and he was pretty much trash
Yeah,
for a big chunk of the season. And so far this season, it looks like whatever mental issues he had going on,
it's over.
right? He found the shot. He's not hitting the backboard on jumpers. He's not hitting the side of the rim and like he was last year. So I think it just depends on the individual. Other guys they go out and ball out in the last contract year. They go
Hmm.
out and they earn that bag. I don't know if that's the case with Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I remember Albert Hainsworth when he was playing with the Tennessee Titans, bust his butt, got the big bag in Washington, and laid down like a freaking dog, like nobody's business. Got the huge contract as a defensive tackle, and just said, "You know what? My job is done. I got my money, kind of let's lay down here in the field. He was never close to what he was in Tennessee. But yeah, Jamar Chase, I don't think he's that kind of dog. He still loves to compete. When you're watching the highlights or even watching just some of the Bengals games, you still see him going out there doing a lot of what he's been known to do and what got him his name. 7 touchdowns on the season, 4 more than Zay Flowers, but Zay Flowers has more yards per reception coming from Lamar Jackson, who isn't Joe Burrow, which is supposed to be more of a pure passer.
Yeah, it could be sort of a situation like the Cowboys back in the day. Michael Irvin gets a big catch and they get to the 4 yard line and Emmett gets the touchdown.
Yeah, yeah, right. Getting all those
um,
touchdowns and
because
breaking
because
records
once you
because of
get
2 yards.
inside the 10, for if you're the Ravens, man, you're gonna give the ball to Derrick Henry. You ain't trying to throw no fade routes. Hey, go run it in, big guy.